You step into the Bell Witch Cave expecting silence and cool air. Instead, you hear a third set of lungs breathing right behind you, in perfect raspy sync with your own. Most people believe that if you walk away from a haunted house, the nightmare stays behind with the rotting foundation. But in Adams, Tennessee, the terror didn't just haunt a home, it claimed the very ground beneath it. The entity didn't stop at the front door. It followed the Bell family into the earth, retreating into a damp, suffocating limestone labyrinth that still vibrates with the frequency of their original fear. You don't visit the Bell Witch Cave to explore history. You go there to see if the most malevolent entity in American folklore is still listening. For years, an unseen force calling itself Kate tormented John Bell, eventually poisoning him in the only documented case of a ghost killing a human. Even future President Andrew Jackson fled the property after an invisible hand froze his wagon wheels, saying he'd rather face the entire British Army than this witch. The cabin is long gone, but the spirit never left. It simply moved deeper, into the dark throat of the cave on the banks of the Red River. Inside, the air feels heavy, pressing against your lungs. The temperature drops into a bone-chilling dead zone no Tennessee summer can touch. But the true horror is the sound. In the deepest chambers, visitors report hearing a third set of lungs breathing in perfect sync with theirs. Investigators have recorded guttural whispers that speak visitors' names and recite secrets they've never told anyone. The warning is absolute: the curse of the stone. Take even one pebble and the witch follows you home. For over a century, those who stole souvenirs reported shadows in their hallways and phantom scratching on their walls at night. In the Bell Witch Cave, the darkness isn't empty. It's just waiting for you to look away. In the jagged mountains of Greenbrier County, West Virginia, death usually stays buried. But in 1897, Elva Zona Heister Shue became the only woman in American history to solve her own murder from beyond the grave. Most hauntings are about lingering dread. The Greenbrier Ghost was about cold, clinical justice. When Zona died suddenly, just months after marrying the charismatic blacksmith Erasmus Shue, the local doctor, prevented from a full exam by the grieving husband, chalked it up to everlasting faint. Zona was buried in the frozen earth, and that should have been the end. But the mountains don't forget a debt. For 4 consecutive nights, Zona's spirit appeared at the foot of her mother's bed. She wasn't a shimmering mist, she was a solid, chilling presence that physically turned her head until it faced backward to show exactly how her neck had been snapped. The psychological horror of this tale isn't just the apparition, it's the legal precedent. Mary Jane Heister's testimony about her daughter's ghost was so unwavering that the prosecutor eventually exhumed the body. The autopsy revealed a crushed windpipe and a broken neck, exactly as the spirit had described. Erasmus Shue was convicted of murder, marking the first and only time ghost testimony helped put a killer behind bars. Today, a state historical marker stands as a grim reminder that Zona Shue is still watching. If you're driving through the mist-heavy valleys of West Virginia and feel a sudden sharp chill at the base of your skull, don't just reach for a scarf. It might just be Zona, making sure you're looking exactly where she wants you to. If you're driving through Churchill, Tennessee at night, and your GPS suddenly points you toward a low concrete archway choked with dead vines, do not go in. Most tunnels are built to get you from one side of a hill to the other. Sensabaugh Tunnel was built to trap a scream that never stopped. The legend is simple and brutal. In the 1920s, a man named Edward Sensabaugh lost something irreplaceable inside this tunnel. Some say his child, others say his mind. Whatever happened here,
The darkness kept it. Now the tunnel itself is hungry. The local dare is as stupid as it is famous. Drive to the exact middle, kill the engine, and pull out the key. For the first few seconds, there's nothing but silence. Then you hear it, rhythmic thumping against the trunk, like someone desperately trying to climb inside. But the real terror begins when you try to leave. Countless drivers have watched their headlights dim and their engines die for no reason. In the sudden darkness, many have seen a tall, gaunt figure standing at the far end of the tunnel, blocking the exit. When they finally manage to restart the car and speed out, they think it's over, until the next morning. That's when they notice the small, muddy handprints of a child smeared across the inside of their windows, prints that could only have been made from within the car. In Sensabaugh Tunnel, you don't just drive through a hill, you drive through a tragedy that is still trying to find its way out, and sometimes it chooses your backseat.
If you're walking through the Moonville Tunnel after dark and see a single white lantern swinging toward you through the pitch black, do not move. Press your back against the wet brick wall and hold your breath, because the man carrying that lantern has been dead since 1880, and he still thinks the train is coming. Deep in the forgotten woods of Zaleski State Forest, Ohio, stands the last remaining scar of the ghost town of Moonville. Once a bustling coal mining settlement, the town vanished decades ago, swallowed by the forest. Only one thing remains: the massive brick railroad tunnel that cuts straight through the ridge like an open wound. For over 100 years, the spirit of a brakeman crushed beneath the wheels of a midnight freight train has refused to leave. He still walks the invisible tracks every night, swinging his lantern to warn oncoming trains that no longer exist. The tunnel is ice cold even in summer. The air smells of wet soot and ozone. Visitors hear heavy boots crunching on gravel when no one else is there. Then the lantern appears, swaying, getting closer, its light dancing across the dripping brick walls. Many have felt invisible hands shove them hard against the side, as if clearing them from the path of a train only the ghost can see. The tragedy of Moonville isn't just that the town died, it's that the death never stopped repeating. The rails are gone, the trains are gone, but the signalman is still on duty, and he will walk right through you to do his job. You're driving the twisting backroads of Bowcatcher Mountain in Asheville after midnight. The fog is so thick your headlights barely cut through it. Suddenly, an old stone archway appears in the gloom. Helen's Bridge. If you stop the car and whisper her name 3 times, she will answer. Most people see only a beautiful piece of 1900s masonry. Locals know better. This bridge is a gateway to a mother's grief so violent it burned itself into the stone forever. In the early 1900s, a woman named Helen lived in a mansion nearby. One night, a fire ripped through the house and took her young daughter. The loss shattered her. Unable to live with the silence, Helen walked to this very bridge and took her own life. Now she walks it every night. The air around the arch feels heavy, almost electric. Engines suddenly die, phones lose power. Witnesses describe a tall woman in a long, dark dress pacing the top of the bridge, her face hidden by shadows or a veil. Others smell thick smoke and burning wood, followed by gut-wrenching sobs that echo through the trees. She isn't looking for peace. She isn't looking for help. She is still searching for her daughter, and she will check every face that calls her name. If you hear a woman crying on Helen's Bridge tonight, do not answer, because in her grief, she might decide you are the one who started the fire. You're driving through Chickamauga National Military Park after dark. Your headlights cut through the fog, and suddenly, 2 glowing emerald eyes appear in the middle of the road.
They don't blink. They don't run. They just stare. And that's when your engine dies. Most battlefields are haunted by the soldiers who died there, but Chickamauga, the place the Cherokee once called the River of Death, is home to something much older and far more hungry. They call it Old Green Eyes. The creature was already here long before the Civil War. In 1863, during one of the bloodiest battles in American history, over 34,000 men fell in just 2 days. While the soldiers bled out on Snodgrass Hill, something else came out of the woods to feed. Survivors from both sides described the same nightmare: a tall, hairy figure with a mouthful of fangs and 2 pulsing green eyes that glowed like lanterns in the smoke. Today, the legend is still alive. Rangers and locals report the same sequence. The fog rolls in off the creek, the crickets go silent, your car suddenly stalls, and those green eyes appear in the tree line. Some say it's not a ghost of a soldier at all. It's an ancient predator that lives on the ridge, and the Civil War simply gave it the biggest feast it had ever seen. If those eyes lock onto you, do not get out. Do not take a photo. Just pray your engine starts again. Because in Chickamauga, the past doesn't just haunt you, it watches you with hunger. You're standing dead center in the screaming tunnel at midnight. Strike one wooden match. The flame doesn't flicker. It dies instantly, blown out by a cold wind that smells like burning hair and charred flesh. Most tunnels are built to move water or trains. This one was built to trap a scream. Carved through limestone near Niagara Falls in the 1800s, the screaming tunnel was only meant to drain farmland. But one night, a young girl's farmhouse caught fire. Her clothes engulfed in flames, she ran into the dark, damp passage, hoping the moisture would save her. Instead, she burned alive in the blackness, her final blood-curdling screams echoing off the stone walls forever. The tunnel still remembers. The air inside is always damp and unnaturally thin. Visitors who dare to light a match in the middle report the same nightmare. First, a faint, distant sobbing that quickly turns into a deafening, high-pitched shriek that seems to come from the walls themselves. The flame is violently snuffed out by an invisible force, leaving you in a darkness so thick it feels like it's pressing against your skin. Some say the girl's spirit doesn't just haunt the tunnel, she is the tunnel. Every spark reminds her of the fire that killed her, and she lashes out at anyone who brings light into her eternal darkness. The warning is simple. Never bring fire into a place where fire is the enemy. If your match goes out in the screaming tunnel, don't try to light another. She's already found you. You're boating on Lake Lanier at night when you see her, a woman in a faded blue dress walking slowly across the water, right where the lake is over 100 feet deep. She doesn't swim, she doesn't sink, she just glides toward your boat. And that's when you realize the dead don't want to be rescued. They want company. Most lakes offer recreation. Lake Lanier is a sprawling graveyard. In the 1950s, entire towns, churches, and cemeteries were deliberately flooded to create this reservoir. Beneath the surface lie forgotten streets, rotting houses, and thousands of unmarked graves that were never moved. The most famous spirit is the Lady of the Lake. In 1958, Delia Parker Young and her friend Susie Roberts drove off a bridge into the dark water. A year later, fishermen pulled a decomposed body from the depths, still wearing a blue dress, but missing both hands. Since that night, the lady has never left. Divers describe the same nightmare, invisible hands grabbing their ankles in the silt, pulling them downward. Others hear rhythmic knocking against the hull of their boats in areas where the water is deepest. At night, People on shore see pale figures standing motionless at the water's edge, staring silently at the lake as if waiting for someone who never returned. Over 700 people have died on Lanier since it was created, far more than any natural lake this size should claim. Locals don't call it bad luck, they call it hunger. The lake was built over a world that wasn't ready to die, and every year it takes a few more souls to fill the void. You're driving along East Lothar Drive on a humid summer night around White Rock Lake in Dallas. The road is quiet, the water is black and still. Then you see her, a young woman in a dripping 1930s evening gown standing on the shoulder, soaked to the bone. She looks up at you with wide, pleading eyes. Most people would pull over. That's exactly what she wants. The Lady of the Lake has been hitchhiking since the 1940s. The story is always the same. A beautiful girl drowned in a boating accident or car crash near the shore. Now she waits for a ride home. If you stop, she gets in the back seat without a word. She's polite. She speaks softly, shivering, giving an address in Oak Cliff. She sits quietly, water pooling on your upholstery, the smell of stagnant lake water slowly filling the car. The temperature drops, your breath fogs the windows. But she doesn't scream, she doesn't vanish, she just rides. The real horror comes when you reach the address. You turn around to say, "We're here." The back seat is empty. Only a heavy, sodden patch of water remains where she sat. When you knock on the door, an elderly person answers. They look at the wet spot, then at you, and say the same thing every time. "That was my daughter. She drowned years ago." The Lady of the Lake isn't looking for a ride home. She's looking for someone to witness her final cold moments, over and over again. If you ever see a drenched woman in an evening gown on the shore of White Rock Lake, keep driving. You're walking down a dark hallway in the abandoned York County Hospital when you hear it. The slow, rhythmic squeak of a gurney wheel rolling across the floor right behind you. But the building has been empty for decades, and the wheels are still moving. Most abandoned buildings feel empty. This one feels crowded. The old York County Hospital in Pennsylvania is more than crumbling brick and broken glass. It's a living archive of pain. The air is thick with the sharp smell of ether and old blood that never quite left. Thousands of people suffered and died here during brutal epidemics, horrific industrial accidents, and desperate surgeries, and many of them never checked out. Even now, long after the last patient was carried away, the hospital is still working. Explorers hear muffled doctors' voices through the walls, the clatter of metal instruments on trays, and the frantic gasps of patients who died on the table decades ago. Shadows don't just flicker here, they detach from the walls and follow you down the corridor with purpose. The worst part? The cold hand phenomenon. A sudden freezing grip around your wrist as if someone is checking your pulse and deciding whether you're worth saving. But the real warning is the basement. Once used as a makeshift morgue, it's where the darkness became permanent. People who go down there report overwhelming nausea, disorientation, and a voice behind them calmly asking, "May I see your chart?" If you ever hear that question in the York County Hospital, don't answer. Start running, because the doctors are still making their rounds, and they don't care if you were ever admitted. And if you think these places are far away, remember, something followed the bells underground, and some say it never stopped listening.